demotic. They are one-to-one counterparts of each other. Really, it's an aesthetic choice. Now, the demotic could be used, in fact, in every context. The hieroglyphic context is used, the hieroglyphic script is used in religious, royal, and artistic contexts. But the demotic script can be found in these uses as well. The hieroglyphic is older, as I said before, but the demotic is better attested. So, there are 4 vowels, traditionally A, E, I, and O, but their correct transcriptions are given below. This is a null vowel, as we'll get onto later. One of these vowels, A, is strictly word initial. It cannot occur within a word. This is because it would be redundant to do so. Well, we'll get to it when we get to it. We have 15 consonant signs. You can just read those out. And 4 closed consonant signs. These are consonants with an inherent vowel. Open consonants can be closed with a vowel sign, but closed consonants cannot. This is N, null, S, null, T, null, and Ti. So, how are you supposed to read a meroitic word? Well, the prevailing theory, and it's been there since Griffith's time, the early 20th century, is that meroitic is an alpha syllabary. Now, how strictly people want to treat meroitic as an alpha syllabary depends. I think most merioticists understand that the language is a bit more nuanced than that. There are exceptions, there are details, and that the absence of a vowel sign between 2 open consonants does not necessarily mean that the nuclear vowel is an A. So, in typological perspective, meroitic is a defective alpha syllabary. What do I mean by that? Well, it's halfway between an abjad and a true alpha syllabary. Essentially, meroitic has too few vowels to constitute a true alpha syllabary. It did not innovate vowels for the back vowels, O and U. So I've given general principles. It's probably best to pause here on how you should read it. It might sound difficult at first, but they're very, very intuitive. I've included 2 caveats of illegal sequences, and these almost never occur in good meroitic. If you believe that these occur, you're probably misreading the signs. So the illegal sequences are a closed consonant before a vowel, and of course a vowel before a vowel. Meroitic, the script does not allow 2 vowel characters in sequence. You just have to speculate based on the external relationships what the underlying vowel was. In this respect, meroitic is a lot like Egyptian, which can't be vocalized unequivocally because there's just not enough information encoded in the language to allow for simple to allow for a simple reconstruction of its vocalism. So I'm going to elaborate on 2 key exceptions. 2 or 3 depending on how you split them apart. 2 of them are already known to merioticists. Well, they're known to an extent. The first of these exceptions is the existence of null signs. If you were to apply meroitic as a strict alpha syllabary, no word would ever end in a consonant, and no word would ever start with a consonant besides A. In very early meroitic, you could start a consonant with the null or the weak vowel and the letter E. But in late and correct meroitic, the overwhelming, as evidenced by the majority of the corpus, you cannot start a word with a vowel sign except for A. So meroitic worked around this by including two null signs. The first is the W. The W, there are complex reasons for this that relate to Saharan's historical linguistics, but just to make an internal reconstruction, the null consonant doubles as the labular approximant, the W, in a fraction of words, but this is actually a very rare initial consonant in Meroitic. It actually only really occurs in a few morphemes, which are in the middle of words, and in Egyptian borrowings. Probably the best attested independent morpheme in the Meroitic language that starts with W is the sequence that translates to Isis, spelled W-I-S or W-O-S, as you're likely to find it in most books. There are other variants, W-E-S-E, W-I-S-E, but the canonical lexeme is W-I-S. And as you can see from the underlying sound, of course, starts and ends in a vowel, esse or esset. The English Isis is a Greek vulgarization. When this sign occurs intervocally, as it does in the dependent morphemes kiwe, which is for or of Meroitic's synthetic genitive case, or in liwe, which is a kind of copula verb. The existence of the null vowel has been speculated, although disputed, for a long while now. People understand that this sign doubles for both a weak vowel or no vowel at all, and the closed consonants with the inherent null vowel make this evident. The second exception to those pretty simple principles is Meroitic's regressive assimilation law. This affects the consonants N and R before dental consonants. Now, the most famous word that this affects, of course, is Candice, the Kushite word for the Queen Mother. When this word is rendered in Greek and Egyptian and Latin, you see a nasal consonant, which is not reflected in the Meroitic orthography. Three other examples below. Now, what will become apparent in the future is that this law does not just affect N, but it also affects R. The reason for this is not so surprising once you realize that it affects R as well as N. It's the same principle. Well, the principle is rhoticism. So it's the same principle that makes father and father homophones, F-A-T-H-E-R and F-A-R-T-H-E-R. The Meroitic orthography is non-rhotic. However, the dialects from which the Greeks and the Egyptians transcribed from were rhotic, and they did pronounce the weak consonant N and R. There's actually an aerial phenomenon similar to the situation in Europe, where languages not closely related to Meroitic in the Sudan area drop final N and R consonants. Here's a sample of terms from the Meroitic vocabulary. Some of these will have known translations, some of these will differ from the translations you'll find in leading books. So tuesti is well established. This term here is popularly interpreted as an anthronym. It's not, it's a title. This word is well known, and if you break down the name, it means God of Attendance. This is another word also misinterpreted as an anthronym. This error occurred because the word always occurs next to depictions of Meroitic princes and kings. And so the mistake was done to think that the word that says, Amun name, actually it was the name of the Meroitic king. This inference was encouraged by the unfortunate practice where some Meroitic princes and kings had their names rubbed out, and that only the caption to the name remained. Wetry. This is popularly considered undeciphered. The actual meaning of great was misapportioned to the preceding morpheme, which is just a determinant, an article. LG, if you're interested. This is the copula verb, sometimes spelt just L and W. Dem. In Riley's series of books, this translates to cow, which is a pretty good inference, but it's not a cow, it's a sheep. And of course, Sai, a toponym of a place in Egypt. So these rules do allow you to not only translate from the language, but to make corrections to prevailing mistakes, and if done correctly, translate the entire Meroitic corpus. Of course, you'll need a great deal of lexicographical information, which is presently unpublished or unavailable or non-existent. We'll briefly consider the underlying phonology. Of course, this cannot be derived from internal reconstruction alone. It has to be derived from the related languages. The East Saharan languages have very similar phonological profiles. This is the phonemic infantry. So we have a pretty normal infantry of consonants. There's a bilabial series, a dental alveolar series, a palatal series, and a velar series. So these are the 4 places of articulation, excluding the glides, of course. Because Meroitic is a Nilo-Saharan language, or belongs to the Nilo-Saharan phylum, it has a palatal place of articulation. This is extremely rare in Europe. The vowel infantry obviously is more speculative, but it's pretty evident once you look at Zaghawa and Berti. Meroitic's vowel instability is accounted for by the fact that Meroitic has a phonotactic restraint called advanced tongue-root harmony. This means that dependent morphemes and articles attached to, say, a noun or a verb change their nuclear vowels to correspond with the vowel of the root. So if a root has advanced tongue root vowels, then all the vowels appended to that root also change their vowels. East Saharan, all these Saharan languages have really 9 vowels. As we'll have to elaborate later, the historical linguistic situation is a lot more complicated, even though the daughter languages tend to preserve the same places of articulation for their vowels. The correspondence and the vowel changes are complex, just as they are in European languages, and it will take a long time to solve that puzzle. But it's the complexity of Meroitic vowels and the phonotactic restraints which operate on the language which account for the instabilities in Meroitic spelling. Finally, this is a simple demonstration. So this is a plaque to a Meroitic king. So pause that and read. I haven't taken the time to pass the words. So, for example, this here is the dative, which relativizes this noun to this one. There is no verb for born. This is just a series of titles. added to the name and apposition, just like in Egyptian. So that's Lord of Sina. This is King of Kings or Master of Masters. The P is a fossilized Egyptian article. The KR is the actual noun, again borrowing from Egyptian. The S is a adjective ending, which modifies the second KR. And the LW is, again, just a variant spelling of the same LIWE, which you find in the funerary stele. Facenti, or Facent, is viceroy, but obviously that doesn't make sense in this context, so I've just given a placeholder translation of overseer, but it's a political title. SW, which I haven't translated in the main translation, but it's most likely an adverb. That's what the translation, what would best befit the translation. And of course, two toponyms with the Meroitic locative suffix, T soft vowel. There is actually a vowel that the locative suffix isn't just the letter T. In Kush and Amapat. And the last word